like many other people, when it comes to beliefs, I like to have empirical evidence. And to a certain degree, empirical evidence does require a little bit of faith, kind of like with that evolution thing, where they say it's empirical evidence, but I cannot prove one way or the other whether it actually is. Hello everybody, and welcome. I decided this week that I wanted to discuss the law of attraction. It's definitely a topic that weirds people out sometimes, and that's one of the reasons why I decided to do it now. And I'm titling it Law of Attraction for Skeptics because that's kind of what I am. And I know that many people, when they discover that I believe in the law of attraction, are like, you're not skeptical. You believe in the law of attraction, you weirdo. And I'm like, well, no, actually, I am skeptical. And that's why I want to make this video, is so that I can tell you how I came to having this belief and why it might benefit you as well. One of the reasons that I dislike law of attraction is actually because it's very circular in its mechanism, similar to evolutionary theory. And what I mean by that is that within each of these mechanisms, there's kind of a explain all answer that kind of sends you back to the start and is like, well, if it didn't work, then go back. If it didn't work, go back. So to explain this a little bit better, I'm actually going to start by explaining what I mean by it in evolution, and then I'll go further into what I mean by it in the law of attraction. So with evolution, I actually studied under a professor at Evergreen named Brett Weinstein. You might have heard of him. There was a little debacle going on around him for a while, and he's actually accumulated quite a following after that, because people really started to recognize his value. And most of us who were his students admired him greatly. I think it was the same for his wife. I had never actually had the pleasure of learning under his wife, though. But I think that would have been awesome. But yes, those of us who studied under Brett or his wife tended to have a very loyal attachment to him. we all appreciated him and his knowledge and so on. But evolution describes, kind of how life works. And we all have kind of a basic understanding of evolution. It's a pretty widely accepted theory at this point. Most people accept that it is at least a role in how we came to where we are. Evolution says, we evolved from monkeys and, all these other steps. The Big Bang happened and now we're here. And there are billions of steps in between. And while I have no issue with that concept, there is this one aspect of evolution that really bugs me. And that's the one that says everything is an evolutionary adaptation. And if you don't understand it yet, that just means you don't understand it, because it is an evolutionary adaptation. And that's kind of where I go with where it's circular. Evolution says everything is an adaptation, and just because you don't know where it came from doesn't mean it's not an adaptation. So all you have to do is keep researching it further. And that's actually one of the things I admire most about Brett, is he takes that concept. He says, well, this is an evolutionary adaptation. I believe in evolution, so this has to be an adaptation. Why? And then he does the research on the why. And it led to some very interesting discussions. The classes I took with him were about evolution and psychology, and then evolution and music. So you had some pretty interesting discussions there. One of the problems I see with evolution, though, is it does require a significant amount of trust. I actually believe most sciences require a significant amount of trust. And the reason being, you have to trust that the person doing the experiment came to the correct conclusion from their data, and you also have to believe that they did the experiment correctly with all the requirements and specifications that they actually listed, that they actually went through the process that they described that they went through. And while some people will look at that and go, oh, well, you're just really cynical, people are truly honest and so on and so forth. And I'm actually not disagreeing with that. I agree that humans are pretty much honest, want to be at least, and that they are good the majority of the time. We want to be better people. We want to embrace our best sides. We want to help the world, so on and so forth. And there are exceptions, but on average, I think that's how it works. So usually what I'm saying here is there no bias in that scientific experiment at all? And the answer to that is almost 100% no. There is definitely some kind of bias. And because of that bias, I don't fully trust the experiment. And the only way I could trust the experiment was if I did it myself. And I have no intention of spending the rest of my life trying to replicate scientific studies that other people have done. It is just not that interesting to me. So I cannot fully prove that gravity exists. And I'm not going to go back and reread all of Einstein's studies and whatnot and try to figure out how to replicate how he got the results that he got. Honestly, all that matters to me is that when I jump up, I come back down. That's all that really matters. It's the only aspect of gravity that really applies to my life. A plane might be able to fly, but, eventually it's going to come back down to Earth again. That is the way it is. And that works for me. But when it comes to evolution and stuff like that, there is this kind of base concept that you have to accept the theory, at least, as true before you can actually go anywhere with it. Same with the law of attraction. The law of attraction, you probably know a little bit about it, but it's essentially the concept of like attracts like, or that which is, I forget how Abraham said it, but it was really good. But it's kind of like magnets, if you have two magnets close enough together, they will inevitably be drawn toward each other, and one may even flip around so that it actually is the right polarization for them to stick together. I don't know all that much about magnets, so however that works, that's how it works. The cool thing is that magnets are also attracted to metal, so that's why you can attach magnets to your refrigerator. Metal is not necessarily a magnet, and magnets, I don't know, but they may not be necessarily all metal. I think they are, but I cannot say for sure. So, if you want to give me that information, feel free to leave it in the comments. I will probably read it and be like, oh yeah, cool, magnets can be this or that, or they cannot be anything but metal, or whatever the case may be. But that's kind of the concept, is that magnets are attracted to magnets, but they're also attracted to metal. So metal is enough like a magnet that it can be attracted to it. That a magnet can be attracted to metal. So similarly, you have men and women, different genders, but they are similar enough that they are attracted to each other. That's kind of the basis of attraction in the first place, assuming you're straight. Which you might not be, but, once again, that doesn't really apply to me. I that's your life. Similarly, if you are racked by guilt and feel like you should be punished for your heinous crimes or bad thoughts, it is completely acceptable and expected for you to wind up with an abusive partner who punishes you. Why? Because you feel you should be punished. So that's kind of what the law of attraction is. If you are this, you will attract that. And that goes for both positive and negative. If you're negative, you'll attract negative. If you're positive, you'll attract positive. And sometimes it actually has nothing to do with the actual object you're attracting, but the method in which it comes. Now, the reason why I say that law of attraction is circular is because it states that if you didn't get that which you want, despite the fact that you felt you were a proper match to it, then you aren't actually a match to it yet. Because if you were, you wouldn't be back here asking why you didn't get that which you wanted. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, oh, you freaking kidding me? You just sent me back to the start again. You didn't actually give me an answer. But just like with evolution, it could be 100% correct. Just the very fact that you came here asking why you didn't get it meant that you weren't a match to it. And therefore you have to start again. You have to become a match to it again. But definitely don't get me wrong. I definitely believe in the law of attraction, just as I don't have any issue believing in evolution. So the question is, if I don't believe in these things because I trust them innately to be correct, why is it that I do believe in them? And in my head, the answer to that is actually pretty simple as well. The reason I hold these beliefs is because I believe that they benefit me in one way or another. Evolution honestly doesn't apply that much to my life. I don't plan on living through multiple lifetimes and experiencing each individual mutating cell within my body. Honestly, I probably won't even know if I develop a cancerous cell, because supposedly we are developing some at any given point in our lives. So, evolution, sure, I have no problem believing that. It doesn't really apply to my everyday life. So I have no issue believing it. More than likely, it could benefit me because I fit into the more standardized belief system. So that's a potential benefit there. I can have discussions with other people and find connections. So there's a potential benefit there as well. So, like many other people, when it comes to beliefs, I like to have empirical evidence. And to a certain degree, empirical evidence does require a little bit of faith, kind of like with that evolution thing, where they say it's empirical evidence, but I cannot prove one way or the other whether it actually is. So the best way for me to determine if something is of benefit to me is actually through charting. And the easiest way to chart is actually with a graph that I will be putting up on the screen right here, and with the concept of God. So in this chart of belief in God, you kind of put God's existence as one, because God either does or doesn't exist. So you have God's existence, yes and no, and then you have your belief in God along the side, and you have yes and no. Now, you can do a similar process with charting genes, and a good example of this is the coupling of male and female reproductive ingredients or whatever, the egg and the sperm. You've got X and X from the woman, and you've got X and Y in the man. And when you chart it out, you've got X, X at the top, and X, Y on the side, and then you couple them together. This one is XX, this one is XX, this one is YX or XY, and this one is XY, which means you have a 50-50% chance of getting a boy, and you have a 50-50% chance of getting a girl, according to those genes. Now, I don't know how that might actually translate into the chances of you having a boy or a girl, because, I don't know how big of a role chance plays in our world or not, and honestly it doesn't matter, because if I were going to have a kid, it probably wouldn't matter what gender it was. But, knowing that the chances are 50-50 is all well and good, so why not? But back to this God concept. You've got God exists, yes or no. You've got you believe in God, yes or no. So at the top, you've got yes and yes, which means God does exist, and you believe. At the top right, my right anyway, you've got God does not exist, but you do believe. Then on the lower left, you have you do not believe, but God does exist. And then on the lower right, you have you don't believe and God does not exist. So here too, you have a 50-50% chance of having it right. If you believe God does exist and he doesn't, you are wrong. If you believe that God doesn't exist and he does, you are wrong there too. So your only chances of actually having an accurate answer are either God does exist and you believe, or God doesn't exist and you don't believe. And if we were just going for accuracy, you could be like, okay, so it's better to choose between the yes and the yes or the no and the no. It would be silly to choose one of the other ones. The true factor comes in, though, when you add in potential repercussions. And the standard repercussion of religion and God is this concept of heaven and hell. So in the yes, yes category, God does exist and you believe, the idea is you will go to heaven. In the section, God does exist and you don't believe, you will then go to hell. Now, when it comes to God doesn't exist and you believe, the results are neutral. There is no negative or positive aspect to that, so I would put neutral there. And then in you don't believe and God doesn't exist, the results are also neutral. So the only negative side effect that you could possibly experience is if you don't believe in God and he does exist. Obviously, it's a little more complex than that. Religion is a very broad topic and so on. But also, the only positive benefit you can receive, according to this chart, is when you believe in God and he does exist. So, if you are looking just at this chart to determine what belief would be most beneficial to you, I can tell you that it's probably safer to believe that God does exist. Because if he does, that is the only way you receive the benefit. So from a pure safety perspective, and believing that, whether or not you go to heaven is largely determined on your belief in God, then I definitely recommend believing in God. It makes the most sense. Now, personally, I don't believe in hell. I do kind of believe in heaven, but it's not the traditional religious version. And I can definitely talk about it later if you want. So if you want that kind of video, make sure you leave a comment saying, yes, Allie, we want a video on what heaven is to you. This chart doesn't necessarily apply to me. I believe in a God-like thing. So I guess to a certain degree, I am choosing the potential benefit there. But, my reasoning are much broader than God does exist. And the only way that I can get to heaven is by believing in him. So, when it comes to my belief in LOA, or Law of Attraction, the reasons that I believe in it are largely because of a similar charting effect as this God example. And I'll definitely go into more detail about that in the next video, which is more about the specifics of Law of Attraction. But I definitely think that this is a good starting point for you guys. The reasons that I believe in the Law of Attraction are because, in my perspective, it is a greatest benefit for me to believe in the Law of Attraction. So, I hope this made sense to you. I'm going to leave you here with this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And if you want to continue to see videos like this and you want to provide me with a sense of security and accomplishment, definitely head on over to my Patreon page and contribute to my efforts. I got the $5 a month category and the $25 a month category. In my last video, I discussed the concept of the community I want to build. If you're interested in becoming a member of that, definitely join the $25 a month tier, because that will add you to the list of participants in that one. But you can totally just go with the $5 a month one and just contribute to my efforts as a video maker and give me a sense of satisfaction in knowing that I've provided something of value to you. Also, make sure you click on the thumbs up button, like the video, click on the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you are notified when new videos are posted. I try to do one a week. They come up on Fridays at noon, so be sure to keep up to date on that. But obviously the subscribe button is the easiest way to do so. You can also share this video if you like. This one, I believe, is easily shareable. I don't think it requires too much formal knowledge, so I think it'd be a good one to be shared. But that is everything I have for you today, and I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. So, thank you once again. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you soon. Bye.